There exists a certain type of person who walks into a room and, without saying a word, commands attention, not because they demand it, but because their very presence exposes something unsettling about everyone else. Friedrich Nietzsche spent his life studying this phenomenon, why some minds radiate such formidable strength that they unconsciously reveal the fragility in others.
What you're about to learn isn't about dominance or intimidation. It's about cultivating a mindset so unshakable, so rigorously disciplined, that it naturally disrupts the comfortable illusions most people live by. Modern psychology now confirms what Nietzsche proclaimed in the 19th century. True mental strength doesn't just elevate you, it holds up a mirror to the world's psychological weaknesses.
Let me ask you something revealing. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable people get around those who refuse to participate in office gossip, remain calm during others' emotional storms, speak uncomfortable truths with measured precision? This isn't coincidence. It's what Nietzsche called the will to power in its highest form, not over others, but over oneself. When he wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," he was revealing the first pillar of the iron mind, purpose so crystalline it makes suffering irrelevant. The neurological truth behind this is fascinating. Research shows that people with this mental discipline exhibit reduced amygdala hijack, their fear response doesn't control them. Enhanced prefrontal activation, they choose responses rather than react. Mirror neuron resistance, they don't unconsciously absorb others' chaos. But here's where Nietzsche's insight cuts deepest. Most people don't fear strong minds because they're threatening. They fear them because these minds expose an uncomfortable truth, that their own mental fragility is a choice. Consider how society reacts to truly disciplined thinkers. The employee who works without complaining becomes intimidating to slackers. The partner who sets boundaries gets labeled cold by those who want enmeshment. The leader who thinks long-term is ruthless to short-term thinkers. This isn't about you changing to fit the world. It's about the world scrambling to make sense of someone who won't play by its unwritten rules of constant distraction, emotional impulsivity, intellectual conformity. Nietzsche's Zarathustra wasn't feared because he was cruel. He was unsettling because his clarity of thought exposed how unnecessary most suffering truly is. And this brings us to the first practical principle of developing your own iron mind: the discipline of selective attention. Nietzsche famously wrote, "The strength of a person's spirit would then be measured by how much truth he could tolerate." Modern research validates this. What you consistently focus on doesn't just influence your thoughts, it physically rewires your brain. The iron-minded don't avoid negativity, they transcend it by controlling what earns their attention. They consume information deliberately, not compulsively. They engage in debates that strengthen their thinking, not drain their energy. They observe chaos without needing to comment on it. This explains why, throughout history, the most mentally formidable figures, from Marcus Aurelius to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, shared one habit: rigorous control over their attention, not as repression, but as conscious curation. You've just discovered the first pillar of Nietzsche's iron mind, the discipline of attention that separates the mentally formidable from the perpetually distracted. But this is merely the surface. What we explore now cuts deeper. How an unshakable mind doesn't just respond to reality, it actively reshapes it. Nietzsche hinted at this when he wrote, "There are no facts, only interpretations." Modern neuroscience confirms his radical view. Your mental framework doesn't just perceive the world, it generates the world you experience. The perception paradox. Study after study reveals that what we call reality is largely a construction of our nervous system. Consider, patients with Capgras syndrome genuinely believe loved ones are imposters. Placebos can relieve pain as effectively as morphine through belief alone. Witnesses to the same event recall fundamentally different details. The iron-minded leverage this not through denial, but through strategic interpretation. Where most see obstacles, they see training grounds. Where others find insults, they find data. Case study: the Stoic CEO. A Fortune 500 executive, let's call her Sarah, survived 3 corporate coups not by fighting back, but by practicing Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, the love of fate. When competitors stole her ideas, she interpreted it as free market validation. Spread rumors, she treated it as stress testing her reputation. Celebrated her demotion, she used the quiet time to develop a billion-dollar side project, her secret. She wasn't ignoring reality, she was authoring a better one. The 3 mental alchemies. 1. Pain, power, Nietzsche's famous maxim. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Wasn't inspiration, it was neurology. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that deliberate reframing of adversity thickens the prefrontal cortex. The brain physically rewires itself to extract meaning from suffering. This process creates what psychologists call psychological anti-fragility. 2. Chaos, creation. Where the fragile mind sees disorder, the iron mind sees raw material. Nietzsche's notebooks reveal his method. Isolate the core elements of a crisis, detach them from emotional narratives, recombine them into new frameworks. This explains why many groundbreaking innovations emerge during crises. The mentally strong are playing a different game. 3. Resistance, resonance. Here's the counterintuitive truth. The friction you face is diagnostic. Nietzsche observed that. Weak ideas meet no resistance, they're ignored. Strong ideas provoke attack, they threaten the status quo. Ironclad ideas eventually attract disciples, they reshape the battlefield. Practical cognitive reshaping. For professional challenges, the 5 interpretations. Drill. When facing a setback, generate 5 alternative explanations. E.g., my proposal was rejected becomes 1. Testing my resolve. 2. Saving me from a flawed project. 3. Etc. The Anti-Fragility Journal. Document daily how obstacles could secretly benefit you. The Nietzschean reframe. Replace "Why is this happening to me?" with "What does this make possible?" In personal growth, practice negative visualization, not to fear worst-case scenarios, but to disarm their power. Treat emotional triggers as neurological signals, highlighting areas for development. View relationships as mirrors, showing which mental muscles need strengthening. The revelation. Sarah's story isn't unique. Nietzsche predicted what modern psychology now proves. The mind isn't a camera recording reality. It's a sculptor shaping it. Every interpretation is a chisel stroke. But this raises an even more profound question. If reality is this malleable, what responsibility comes with that power? That's where Nietzsche's philosophy takes its most controversial turn. We arrive now at the dangerous turning point, the reason most who attempt Nietzsche's path either turn back or break along the way. Because here's the brutal truth no one tells you. Developing an iron mind isn't about adding strength. It's about first surrendering every crutch you've ever leaned on. Nietzsche called this the death of God. Not a theological statement, but the terrifying moment when you realize no external force will save you, validate you, or give your suffering meaning. Modern psychology terms this the pivotal crisis of self-authorship. Both agree. It's the make-or-break moment in mental transformation. The abyss that gazes back. That famous Nietzsche quote, "When you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you," isn't poetic metaphor. It's neurological reality. MRI studies show that when humans confront the full weight of their freedom, the absence of guaranteed justice, the inevitability of suffering, the brain initially reacts as if facing physical starvation. This explains why. 92% of New Year's resolutions fail by January 15th, data from Strava. Most psychotherapy patients quit just before breakthroughs. Corporate change initiatives spark rebellion precisely when they start working. Case study: the reluctant prophet. Nietzsche's own life demonstrates this crucible. At 34, after publishing works nobody read, abandoned by friends, suffering debilitating migraines, he didn't quit philosophy. He wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star," then produced his masterworks. Thus spoke Zarathustra, beyond good and evil. The genealogy of morals. The pattern? His greatest insights came not despite his suffering, but because he stopped trying to escape it. The three modern abysses. 1. The validation void. Social media has created generationally unprecedented anxiety because it externalizes self-worth through likes, shares, makes being seen feel like existential necessity. Rewards conformity over authentic expression. The Iron Mind solution. Practice strategic invisibility. Delete all social apps for 48-hour bursts. Create work not meant to be shared. Recalibrate your worth barometer. 2. The certainty trap. Our brains crave predictability like oxygen. Yet study after study shows the most adaptable people have higher baseline dopamine. Tolerance for ambiguity correlates with leadership success. Not knowing activates creative problem solving. Nietzsche's antidote? Live experimentally. Recalibrate your worth barometer. 3. The comfort paradox. Here's what fitness studies miss about discipline. Willpower isn't muscle, it's priority alignment. The people with superhuman self-control simply redesigned their environment. What looks like grit is often just superior choice architecture. Recalibrate your worth barometer. Practical shadow work. For career growth. The unanchored week. Go 7 days without checking industry news or comparisons. Reverse engineering fear. When avoiding a task, ask, what identity am I protecting? Productive disorientation. Regularly put yourself in situations where you're the least knowledgeable person. Recalibrate your worth barometer. In personal development. Morning, uncertainty training. Start each day with one deliberate unknown. Values auditing. Every quarter ask, what am I pretending not to know about my compromises? Negative visualization. 2.0. Imagine losing not just possessions, but cherished beliefs. The turning point. This is where Nietzsche's path diverges from pop psychology. Most self-help promises the iron mind will make you invulnerable. The truth? It makes you more vulnerable, but on your terms. Because when you stop running from the possibility of failure, the certainty of criticism, the inevitability of pain, you gain something far more valuable than invincibility, the ability to shape what these experiences mean. But this revelation comes with a responsibility so immense, most prefer to remain mentally fragile. We've reached the most controversial and most transformative layer of Nietzsche's philosophy. Everything you've learned so far about attention, reality shaping, and facing the abyss converges here at the most misunderstood concept in his work, the will to power. This isn't about domination or tyranny, as pop culture would have you believe. It's about something far more radical, the drive towards self-overcoming that separates the truly strong from the merely rigid. Modern psychology is just beginning to catch up to what Nietzsche knew, that your deepest motivation isn't pleasure, survival, or even happiness. It's the need to feel your capacity for growth, the misinterpretation trap. Most people hear will to power and imagine corporate sharks climbing over others, tyrants imposing their will, alpha males demanding submission. But Nietzsche's notebooks reveal the opposite. What is good? Everything that heightens the feeling of power in man, the will to power, power itself. Key phrase, in man, not over others. The iron mind's power is internal before it's external. Case study, the prison philosopher. Consider Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz by practicing what Nietzsche preached, finding meaning in suffering. His discovery? The guards had more physical power but less psychological power. Prisoners who maintained inner purpose outlasted stronger captors. True freedom existed in their choice of perspective. This wasn't positive thinking. It was applied will to power, transforming helplessness into a discipline of mind. The three modern power levers. 1. Energy allocation as warfare. Neuroscience confirms. Decision-making draws from the same pool of glucose as muscle control. The iron-minded don't have more willpower. They ruthlessly eliminate trivial decisions. See Obama's identical suits. Design environments that make good choices inevitable. Treat mental energy like a general treats troops. Never wasted. 2. The master-slave dialectic, updated. Nietzsche's famous dichotomy wasn't about people, it's about internal states. Slave mentality, I must because I have to. Master mentality, I choose because I will. Modern research shows this small shift in framing. Increases pain tolerance by 40% in studies. Boosts perseverance on difficult tasks. Predicts leadership emergence in groups. 3. The anti-goal paradox. Conventional wisdom says set clear goals. Nietzsche's approach, no victor believes in chance. Translation: the iron-minded focus on systems that make success inevitable, not targets that make failure personal. Practical power engineering for career acceleration. The 5% rule. Spend 5% of each workday on something that terrifies you. Decision archaeology. Trace recent choices back to their root motivations. The Nietzschean meeting. Enter every discussion with one unspoken truth you could voice. In personal relationships, practice selective vulnerability. Share deeply, but never dump emotionally. Implement the 24-hour rule before reacting to provocations. Cultivate non-transactional generosity. Give with zero expectation of return. The ultimate realization. Frankl's Prisoners and Nietzsche's Zarathustra shared one insight. Power isn't taken, it's enacted. When you stop waiting for permission to think boldly, refuse to let others define your limitations, treat every obstacle as raw material for self-creation, you're not being arrogant, you're fulfilling your most basic human drive, the will to become. But this raises the final, most dangerous question. What happens when an iron mind meets a world that profits from mental fragility? That's where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes either weapon or wisdom. We've arrived at the culmination, not just of Nietzsche's philosophy, but of your metamorphosis. What began as a study of mental strength reveals itself as something far more profound, a manual for becoming human on your own terms. This isn't about towering over others. It's about the quiet revolution that occurs when you no longer need to tower or shrink at all. The final revelation. Nietzsche's last writings contain a startling admission. After a lifetime studying power, he concluded, "The higher man differs from the lower primarily in that he hears better. Not commands, not flattery. The unspoken truth beneath all human interaction." This explains why the truly iron-minded speak less, but are heard more. Rarely persuade, yet often influence. Command rooms without raising voices. They've learned the secret. Strength isn't loud, it's resonant.
Case study: the silent strategist. History's most formidable minds shared one trait: strategic silence. Einstein would disappear for days to think, driving colleagues mad. Cleopatra mastered the art of the pause before negotiations. Mandela used prison solitude to hone his vision, not as tactics, but as natural expressions of mental sovereignty.
The three pillars of sovereignty. 1. The paradox of detachment. Modern psychology confirms Nietzsche's insight. The less you need a specific outcome, the better you perform. The fewer opinions you require, the more respected yours become. The more comfortable you are walking away, the less you need to. This isn't indifference. It's secure attachment to your own purpose. 2. The art of negative capability. Poet John Keats described genius as being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. The iron mind thrives in ambiguity because it trusts its capacity to navigate without maps. Think without conclusions. Exist without definitions. 3. The anti-fragile identity. Nietzsche's ultimate gift was showing how fragile identities shatter under criticism. Robust identities withstand it. Anti-fragile identities use it as fuel. Your sovereignty toolkit for professional life. The unread inbox. Practice. Let non-urgent emails sit 24+ hours. Trains others' expectations. Strategic late arrivals. Occasionally enter meetings 3 minutes late just to observe dynamics. The white space rule. For every hour of doing, spend 10 minutes asking, who's steering? In personal growth, cultivate vertical friendships with those ahead, behind you in growth. Practice solitude fasting, 1 day monthly with 0 human contact. Keep a deathbed journal. What would your final self thank you for today? The beautiful irony. Here's what Nietzsche knew but couldn't articulate in his loneliness. The iron mind's greatest power is choosing when not to use it. The executive who can crush a rival but shows mercy. The partner who could walk away but stays present. The thinker who sees others' frailty but offers grace. These aren't contradictions. They're the highest expression of strength. Power, choosing love. Your new manifesto. Let's rewrite the rules together. I will be strong, not to conquer, but to kneel where others cannot. I will see clearly, not to judge, but to understand what others dare not. I will walk alone, not forever, but until my togetherness is a choice, not a need. This is the sovereign path, not above humanity, not below it, alongside it, wholly yourself, wholly awake, wholly free. Before you go, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The most dangerous thought is believing you've learned enough. I'll see you in the next video.